All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
Training breaks you down, but recovery makes you stronger. If you want to roll for life, mobility isn't optional. It's the foundation. Sebastian Brosche. You're listening to the Next Level Guy podcast, your backstage pass to becoming the man that you were born to be. What if the key to leveling up your jiu-jitsu game isn't more drilling, more sparring, or heavier lifting, but it was learning how to breathe, stretch, and recover? Meet Sebastian Brosche. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a world-class competitor, and founder of Yoga for BJJ. From battling chronic injuries to becoming the go-to expert in grappler recovery, Sebastian's transforming how athletes train, move, and stay on the mats for life. Think yoga's just stretching? Think again. In this episode, Sebastian explains why mobility is the missing link in your training and how 10 minutes a day can transform your body, recovery, and performance on the mats. Sebastian makes a bold case that mobility isn't just maintenance, it's the missing half of your training that could save your body, extend your mat life, and even sharpen your technique. Discover how to train pain-free, roll smarter, and stay in the game for life. If you like what you hear, then tag @NextLevelGuy Podcast and share your biggest takeaway. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been a fan of your products. I've been a fan of your social media. I've just been a fan for so long, so it's an honour to have you on the show. I've written a little introduction, and it's Sebastian is living proof that flexibility, mobility, and injury prevention are just as crucial as technique and strength in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, an elite competitor, Sebastian discovered the power of yoga after years of pushing his body to the limit on the mats. Now, through Yoga for BJJ, he's helping grapplers worldwide move better, train smarter, and roll pain-free. If you want to train harder, recover faster, and stay in the mats longer, this is the episode for you. Would you agree that to level up your BJJ game isn't about more rolling, it's about recovery?
I think a lot of people would agree with that, and but it's a hard sell because people generally want more of what they can see, and it's a very measurable thing how much you can squat or how much you can deadlift or how many taps you can get in a roll. It's easy to quantify and it's easy to post on social media, and it's living proof that what you're doing works. But it's really short term how many taps you get in today's training or how much weight you lift in the gym. It doesn't show you the hidden other side of the coin, because all training does is break your body down. The rejuvenation and recovery that happens when you sleep is not something you can post on social media. So recovery is what makes you stronger, not training. Training stimulates you and breaks you down, and if you don't have a recovery plan, then you're not gonna get as much out of your training as if you have the recovery. So instead of training twice as hard or twice as much, you can focus on recovering twice as well, twice as good, and that's probably gonna do more for you than training harder. Because I think training hard is what most people focus on, and I think that's so easy. You just have to go hard. But going smart is much, much harder. It's much harder to focus on the non-sexy things, like drinking more water is not very sexy. And by sexy I mean like it's not as cool as lifting heavy weights or doing 2 extra rounds of sparring. But going to sleep early and drinking water and doing a mobility session and eating healthy, those things are just wise and adult, and it's not something that we talk about enough, I think.
Yeah, you don't get as many likes, do you, for putting in about how to eat healthier, how to drink more fluids, how to get your Z's in. And I think that's the problem is the jiu-jitsu's kind of got this celebrity appeal at the minute, and everybody's trying to show off the fancy moves, but not the actual things that work, that make you a better practitioner and also give you longevity on the mats. But how would you define yourself? You know, like how do you explain who you are if you meet somebody in a social setting? Because you have such a unique backstory, you know, you do this amazing product, you've competed, you teach seminars, etc. But how do you tell somebody who you are and what you do if you meet them?
I don't find myself that interesting because I know myself really well. But the older, like what we just talked about, is a typical coming of age discussion. If we were a couple of grandmothers looking back at the younger generation and all the mistakes they were making, we would probably have this. We're basically having a grandmother's discussion, talking about the things that we wish we knew earlier and how silly we are when we're young, and how important it is to get the basics in place to have a good life. These are like timeless topics. But about me, I think I was really lucky. I was really lucky to have met somebody that could open my eyes and see. Like, let's make a religious comparison. Like, let's pretend that yoga is a religion, and I basically met a messiah that showed me the way of the Lord and converted me. And this was not a religion. This was just to sound and healthy movement and using my body more correctly than just going hard rounds. And I used to warm up before yoga. I took one of these big Pilates balls and I played around on it, and that's a really nice warm up for jiu-jitsu. But it wasn't good enough to keep me injury free because I was hurting so bad from doing jiu-jitsu every day. And not only did I do too much jiu-jitsu, I also did it too much, too hard, and not enough either recovery or preparation. So before and after jiu-jitsu, I wasn't preparing and recovering correctly. And then I met somebody who could show me that there is actually a system out there that is very good for jiu-jitsu. It's basically the missing half of jiu-jitsu, if you will. Yoga is really the missing half of jiu-jitsu. They go together. Like, I've seen some people that have done yoga and started jiu-jitsu, and they're like, jiu-jitsu is amazing, but I don't understand how anybody can train this without doing yoga. It's completely senseless. And that's only obvious after you have really tried yoga for some time and you realize that running in circles and doing push-ups and all the things we do in jiu-jitsu, it's not enough. Lifting weights is important. Like doing squats and deadlifts is super important, but you shouldn't do it 4 times a week. 2 is more than enough. And yoga, you should do 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes every day without fail, because that's the only way that you can, because jiu-jitsu is a very athletic sport. If you do running, you can probably do a lot of mistakes and you can be really old and still be a decent runner or a swimmer or a bicyclist. But jiu-jitsu is, it's athleticism on a completely different level, because you're turning and torquing your body in ways that you never thought you would be able to twist your body into. So like jiu-jitsu is really a unique sport, and it requires a tremendous level of athleticism to kind of scramble out of these weird positions. And you're not going to be able to do that if you can't touch your toes. I think nobody should train jiu-jitsu if they can't touch their toes. That should be their top priority, I'm ready to say.
I love that. I mean, it's so true. When I first started, I was powerlifting, deadlifting, squats, and I was throwing weights around thinking I was this amazing athlete. And then when I did my first jiu-jitsu class, they said it was to roll over and your feet to touch over behind your head.
Yeah.
And I couldn't move. I was so stiff. I was just like, am I meant to be able to do this? I was just so much. I was also very fat and out of shape, and I still am. But was that the light bulb moment for you that you thought, I can see a need for this to educate my fellow practitioners, that a lot of people don't understand that, yes, it's great to go balls to the wall and really hard and push yourself, but if you don't actually give yourself any kind of prehab and rehab, you're never going to be able to do it long term, because it's maybe a gentle art, but it knocks 7 belts of shit out of you, basically.
Well, when you say gentle art, I wonder what you're comparing with, because the way that jiu-jitsu is practiced is, I think it's probably worse than ice hockey, or the
getting hit by a bus.
The only harder sport I can think of is like rugby.
It is actually very true, because you think about how the things you do, just the physicality of it, the impact, the contortions you get put into it is quite amazing.
Yeah.
And do you think that's the thing, is that a lot of people start it with the ego? They don't see, they're looking at short-term gains. They're looking for the top. And they're not thinking long-term that they need to be doing this again and again and again and again and again to get close to their black belts.
I think that it's the ego definitely plays a huge role. If the context of what we're talking about is like the most common delusion that people have that train jiu-jitsu, I think the biggest delusion is that you're going to be able to do jiu-jitsu for life. That's a delusion. The way that people train jiu-jitsu, just look at the statistics, at the numbers. How many people start training jiu-jitsu? 1,000 people. How many people get a black belt? 1. There is one 1/10 of a hundredth, like 1 over 1,000 actually get a black belt. Imagine if this was a business. Imagine if jiu-jitsu was a company. and you close one sale out of 1,000 phone calls.
I don't think you've made that job very long. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I think jiu-jitsu is doing a horrible job of taking care of sedentary people, because everybody's sedentary. If you have a smartphone, you're sedentary. You're supposed to squat for 5 hours every day and climb at least 100 trees. That's what our bodies are designed for. So everybody's sedentary. And to take a bunch, to take a cohort of 1,000 people and throw them into a jiu-jitsu training where you're basically just running in circles and doing push-ups, and then some drills, and then hard sparring, it's madness. And we take it for granted. And we accept it. You and me, we are nerds. We are the one out of 1,000 that actually are still here. But rest in peace, all the people that came and they took one class and they're like, I can't do this. I play the piano, or I'm a surgeon, or I like to have healthy knees. This is not good for me. I agree with them, and I think that with a couple of tweaks, a couple of fundamental insights, together with a few smart tweaks, we can make jiu-jitsu scale up 10 times. Maybe 5 million people are training jiu-jitsu in the world now. I want that number to be 50 million people. Because when jiu-jitsu is done, you know it, I know it, and everybody who's ever said that jiu-jitsu saved my life, I think that one way to describe what I mean with that is that jiu-jitsu is incredibly therapeutic. And it's basically giving us the tiger that we don't get to fight anymore, because we put all the tigers in the zoos and we don't have real challenges. We have made-up challenges like taxes. Back taxes is not a challenge that's good for you. It's just stressful. We need to fight tigers. And we have a definite deficit, or the deficit. What's it called? Deficit. We don't have a surplus of tigers, so we need something else. And jiu-jitsu is that thing that just gives us total meaning. So if we can make jiu-jitsu a bit more holistic and a bit more responsible, and just decrease the injury risk by say 50 to 90%, by just having good warm-ups, good recovery, and some restrictions on sparring for beginners, I think jiu-jitsu is going to be incredibly beneficial for the general population, especially now when people are going to lose their job to AI and the world is going to be more and more automated. Maybe in 20 years, robots will do maybe 50 to 99% of all jobs that exist today, which means that we're going to have a lot more free time. So we want to do sports. And I think jiu-jitsu is an amazing sport. And I don't want everybody in the world to play paddle. Paddle is fun, but it's not a sport that everybody should be doing. It's good for cardio, but jiu-jitsu is good for everything. So I love jiu-jitsu so much that I want everybody to be able to train it. And without having good mobility, nobody should really train jiu-jitsu because they're going to get injured and quit.
I mean, you mentioned there about your own sort of recovery from illness by using yoga. Can you go into a little bit about your own personal healing experience? How did you find that yoga was the driving force behind the healing process, the recovery to becoming the great that you are today?
Well, when I was 26, I was in shit shape. Right after I won the world championship, which was the peak of my career, I couldn't work because my back was hurting so much. I couldn't sleep and I almost couldn't train. I had to train because it was an addiction, but I couldn't tie my shoes and I couldn't work, so I couldn't make money. So the woman I met, which was then my girlfriend, later my wife, she saw past probably because she was in love, but she saw past all my excuses. And she's like, try this, try this, try this, try this. And I had so many excuses. And I remember calling myself 70% Sebastian because everything I did was 70%. I never completed anything because I had pain for so many years, like at least 6 years of severe back herniated discs. So I always stopped at 70% because I know if I go further, I'm going to have excruciating pain. And that kind of translated to everything I did in life. It was very, very hard to complete a full movement or I felt I didn't feel like myself. And after this one special episode that I remember so vividly to this day is like just rocking and rolling on my back with support with my arms. And my wife was like encouraging me to try that. And I'm like, wow, I can do this for the first time since I can remember. I haven't done this in years. I was just able to round my spine enough to be able to rock and roll on my spine. So that just put the respect that yoga deserves into me. And I took a full year break from jiu-jitsu and I just did yoga every day. And I can't remember all the details, but I felt absolutely amazing coming back to jiu-jitsu when my back didn't hurt. And I was able to pull off techniques that, I had dismissed maybe 100 techniques. I'm like, this is not for me. This doesn't feel good. This can't be a good technique. But the technique was good. It was just that my body couldn't do the technique because it would hurt. So it was just an epiphany moment for me, and then like a lot of hard work, obviously, because if it takes 26 years to be as stiff as I was, you can't expect it to be fixed in a matter of weeks. It took a long time to learn and work around all those patterns, because even like if you were injured 10 years ago in your shoulder, that injury is gone long ago, but the pattern can stay there for a lifetime. And unlearning and undoing patterns and creating new patterns can be a hell of a challenge. And that's why most people don't succeed when they try mobility and yoga, because they just grossly underestimate the time frame. 10 minutes a day will make a huge difference. But if you want to be able to undo your knee injuries and your stiff hips, it's going to take time. It's going to take a year. And if you want short-term results and take a pill and one and done and just I get asked all the time, Sebastian, do you have a full body sequence that I can do every day that takes 15 minutes? I'm like, brother, can you clean your whole house in 15 minutes? And the answer is yes, but the house is not going to be very clean. If you want to do a thorough job, you have to put on your gloves and you have to clean that damn house and clean out all your shit. That's going to take time. I'm not going to get a lot of customers from being that honest. I would love to say you can get amazing results in 30 days. Yes, but you're not going to get permanent results in 30 days. If you want life-changing results, you have to dedicate yourself at least 15 minutes for at least a year in order to learn. It's like learning yoga and mobility is a bit like learning jiu-jitsu. You're going to fail a lot in the beginning, and it's going to take a long time before you start figuring out these things.
Because, I mean, what's 15 minutes in 24 hours? You know, and I think that's the thing we think, 10, 15 minutes, that's ridiculous. I can't do that every day. But we do more than that, making coffee and standing in a queue and, you know, like pissing around on our phones, watching Instagram. You know, and I mean, you've talked about how you used jiu-jitsu originally to help to manage your ADHD and things like that. But we get a lot of people who are sitting there just now with, I used to bench press this, but I hurt my shoulder, so I can't do it anymore. I used to run a 5-second 100 meters or whatever. You know, it's some ridiculous claim, but my knee's blown out now, or you know, I played football, but I can barely walk anymore. Guys use these like injuries as a badge of honor rather than thinking I need to fix this. And it's like you're saying, we can make a massive changes by working out, doing it daily, but we have to undo all the crap, all the damage, all the patterns of excess and mayhem that we've caused our bodies. But for those who don't know or who have never tried yoga, what are the biggest benefits they can expect? You know, particularly for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but just for general health. What is it about yoga that makes it such a sort of revolutionary recovery tool?
Getting to know your own body. How well do you know your L4, L5 disc? How well do you know it? Do you know what it wants, what it needs, what it prefers, what it's afraid of? How much connection? When was the last time you talked to your right elbow? Do you really know if your right big toe likes your shoes? Do you ever have conversations with your body? And I don't mean in a hippie way. I mean like in a direct, vivid experience. When you sit in front of the computer and you lift your arms overhead and you kind of stretch, do you do that for long enough? Or do you just do it bare minimum every time? Do you do it for 1 second or 2 seconds? Or do you consciously take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 extra breaths and stay there until you start getting uncomfortable in the back bend? Because if you learn to do that, and then you come down, you're going to get goosebumps because it feels so good to put your body into that position that almost feels a bit uncomfortable. And then when you're out of it, you're like, oh man, I feel energized. The biggest power that yoga has to transform you is that you get to know your body on a really personal, vivid level. I think that's it.
Well, it's a very good point. I mean, how often do you hear people who actually they know there's a nagging sensation there, but they have no idea what it is? They always talk that they could get the girl, win the fight, they could run up the hill and all this kind of stuff, but most of the time they're out of breath going up a flight of steps because they don't work their body, they don't know their body, they don't understand their body and their limitations. You know, was it the one they used to say in Maverick, it's your ego's writing checks your body can't cash, you know, and I think that's very true for a lot of guys nowadays.
Yes.
When you started out, what was it about that moment where jiu-jitsu became a hobby going into a passion to becoming a potential career for you? Can you remember that moment that you thought, hey, I'm actually pretty damn good at this?
Well, I had been doing jiu-jitsu for many, many years before I started jiu-jitsu because I was doing judo in a way that was actually jiu-jitsu. I did not enjoy the rule set in judo. I was really preferring to work on the ground. I really enjoyed the Nevasa aspect of judo. And when I realized that my friend Michael Marfe, the most successful Swedish jiu-jitsu guy at that point, he won the worlds in blue belt, I think. And in purple belt, actually. he showed me that it's possible to do really well in jiu-jitsu, and I was just having a hysterically fun time watching jiu-jitsu because it was so informal compared to judo. And when I tried it, I'm like, man, this is good stuff. So when I did the switch, I had a lot of unlearning to do because I had many bad habits from judo, like turning my back whenever someone would swept me and stuff. But I fell in love with jiu-jitsu instantly, and there was no going back. And I think I'm just as excited about going to a new academy or going to training now as when I was a white belt. I think that's really rare, even in jiu-jitsu, to be like super excited about jiu-jitsu all the time. And I could talk about side control for 3 hours, I really have a deep love for jiu-jitsu. But I get more adult every year, luckily. So I start realizing that this is not just some weird fetish or something. This actually has incredible value for society. Because just think about, let's say you have a daughter and she's 17 years and she's walking through a park. You don't want her to be one of those girls that look like a victim. You want her to be so confident that when she looks at a group of guys, instead of being afraid, she's like, well, if they try to catch me and do something to me, one of them is going to die. And when she has that confidence, and when they approach her and she say, okay, guys, I know what you want. One of you are going to die today. If I die, I die. But one of you are going to die. Who's it going to be? That's the level of confidence that I would want in a daughter. And only one thing in the world can give her that confidence, and it's not a gun. It's jiu-jitsu. Nothing in the world can replace that self-confidence. And when she steps up on a stage for the first time and do a TED talk or a presentation or pitching her new startup, that confidence is going to radiate through everything she does. So jiu-jitsu is a fucking superpower. Nothing will give you that confidence that jiu-jitsu gives you, because I know that any motherfucker in this room, they cannot take me. I am the best fighter in here, and that many times that confidence is gonna help you. And if it can also help your cardiovascular health, your joint health, maybe it's good for your social health, and you get to meet people regularly and talk shit in the locker room. That also has incredible value. So I'm completely sold on jiu-jitsu. I think it's one of the best things you can ever do.
I love that. It's very true. It's a lot of great point. I mean, it's the cognitive enhancement as much as the physical improvements that it gives. I mean, I know it helps with my depression. It helps with intrusive thoughts. It makes you able to deal with problems better. It gives you the confidence to, be in bad situations. And unfortunately, it does have, it means that it can, there are morons and rapists and all sorts out there. And, we do need to protect ourselves, especially people who are seen as victims because they're smaller. And that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. A 115-pound girl can be throwing a guy around and tapping him out left, right, and centre with a bit of technique, and it's fantastic. And I think more girls definitely need to do it. But
yes,
what are the
also, before you ask your question, I just want to chip in there because those morons, those rapists, those bad guys, there are not many. Maybe there is one in 1,000 who is a real idiot. But how many of those idiots could we have prevented creating if they had started jiu-jitsu early?
Yeah,
because they would have had to fuck up many times before they were thrown out of a jiu-jitsu school, and most likely they would have been inspired by their teammates and found someone to look up to and started a much better path. Because nobody becomes a rapist overnight. It starts, it starts 15 years earlier. And some kids really don't have a fair start in life, and they don't want to go home because they get beaten the shit out of. Jiu-jitsu can be the safe space for the people that end up being horrible people later. So I think jiu-jitsu is valuable, just probably more valuable for men, because okay, we have to teach our daughters to defend themselves, but what about the boys, the young boys? how do we instill good values in them when they all have access to smartphones and can watch porn and whatever on their phones? How do we instill good values in them? School is not going to do it, and the parents is not going to do it. Maybe we can do it at jiu-jitsu. So that's the power that a sport like jiu-jitsu has. It can really turn, would-be criminals into martial artists. And being a martial artist is mastering yourself, and we can't find anything more powerful than mastery of self.
Very true. It's that community spirit, isn't it? It gives you that kind of being there for your teammates, for being gracious in defeat, for being around other men and and other people, and being able to communicate with them and keep each other safe and learn a sport, and it gives you that focus away from sort of more destructive behaviors. It's
Have you heard the term toxic masculinity?
Yep.
Have you heard the term non-toxic masculinity, healthy masculinity?
I've heard of it, but I think it's just the toxic masculinity's the PR big one at the minute, isn't it? They all go on about the Andrew Tate thing and all that, which
so
he is a moron.
If you ask any populist what healthy masculinity is, they can't answer. But we have an answer. It's called jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is really healthy masculinity, right?
Mm. I mean, is that what you see with a lot of the guys that are coming into jiu-jitsu now? In a way, it's not so much just that they have poor mobility, that they also come in with this, I don't know, like this sense of toxic masculinity, this sense of the world owes them, owes them something. They don't have a mission. They don't have a sense of self. They don't understand themselves. And they need the martial art to teach them who they are.
Maybe so. I think that because of testosterone, I think most men have a desire in them to fight. But I don't think we should fight wars with guns, and I don't think we should fight on the street with knives. But I definitely think that we should fight. We should try to kill each other, but if the other guy says tap, you respect it and you stop. And this is not really called fighting, it's called sparring. And if you watch, I love this analogy. Someone said it years ago and I'm using it every chance I have. Watch puppies. What do puppies do all day? They drink milk, they shit, they sleep, and they fight. They just spar non-stop. Biting, rolling, biting. All mammal pups, they spar when they're not sleeping and eating and shitting, they're sparring. Humans are no different. No wonder we have so much ADD in school when kids are not allowed to fight. They are not supposed to punch each other in the face so that they're knocking teeth out. That's violence. But get as close to violence as possible and instill a couple of rules like don't bite each other, and if someone taps, you let go. And then that's actually jiu-jitsu. So I believe that it is the healthiest form of masculinity. And I don't believe that you can tell any difference between dogs. If you have a litter of 12 dogs, 12 puppies, you cannot tell apart which one is a bitch and which one is a male, right? And I don't think that you should be able to tell the difference between boys and girls under the age of, puberty, because all the colors, pink, all the long hair, all the things that we associate with the one gender and another, it's really fictitious. Like when you have a bunch of kids sparring together every day, they're gonna be more or less the same. I don't think that there is almost any difference between girls and boys on the physical level pre-puberty. And I think that they need to spar. They really need to spar. They need to climb trees. They need to run. They need to spend time outdoors, and they need to spar. I think this should really be non-negotiable. But it's a very small group that is going to nod their heads, because if you don't know jiu-jitsu, you have no idea what we're talking about, right?
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
No, it makes a lot of sense because we no longer have these rites of passage, from boyhood to manhood. We no longer have our wars that you would have to go away and face. We don't, we have such an easy life that I think jiu-jitsu lets us be the sort of the physical warrior in a safe, controlled area. And you see how hungry a lot of these young people are. But you give them a focus in a gym, a good coach, a bunch of good training partners who instills good values by just being there and supporting them. Sometimes, like you were saying earlier, it's the first time they've had somebody be nice to them. That they're not just being told they're worthless or they're not getting hit every day. They're getting encouraged and motivated, and that can be the thing that changes a young person's life. I mean, I've seen it in some of the guys I've trained with. But you said in an interview a few years back that to do normal yoga is great, if your goal is to get good at yoga. But yoga for BJJ is better to better your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How do you strip away the fluff of yoga, probably not a good way of saying it, and tailor it specifically for grapplers? How do you make it so that it targets and helps grapplers, but it doesn't go into more, the stuff that you don't get as much benefit from?
Well, just a super quick history lesson. Yoga was not allowed for women until, I think, 1950 or 1960.
Okay.
Only men were allowed to do yoga in India. And now it's almost as if yoga is only for women over age of 35. So it's very cultural, and it's very where you ask and when in time you ask. So the yoga somehow appealed a lot to women in the West. So that's why yoga is seen as a woman's thing. But just to go back a little bit, and then it was only a man's thing. And there are just as many styles and interpretations of what yoga is as martial arts. There's a big difference between a karate and a boxing lesson and a jiu-jitsu lesson and a classic jiu-jitsu lesson. It's very different sports, even if it's all martial arts, right? And yoga for BJJ, my brand is basically just power yoga or vinyasa yoga, but without using the Sanskrit labels. So instead of saying Virabhadrasana, I say Warrior 2. And I usually try to not use the labels at all. I try to translate it to jiu-jitsu terms. So instead of saying child pose, I say turtle. Because you need to be able to get your ribs close to your thighs in turtle. Otherwise, the guy can put their hooks in. I'm trying to jiu-jitsufy yoga so that it makes more sense for people who are brand new. Because when someone is hooked on yoga for BJJ, I don't need to convince them. It's just preaching to the choir. And I try to really avoid preaching to the choir instead of just trying to preach to I'm trying to convert as many people as possible, basically. Again, if this was a religion, I would be the Messiah, like the mobility Messiah, trying to spread the gospel around the world, getting more people to see the light, start believing, start praying. So like I'm in Dubai now, and here they pray 5 times a day. And I think it's a fantastic routine to take a break. It's just like they have a smoke break 5 times a day, but instead of smoking, they're, doing a little physical routine, bending down, remember what's important. It's a great routine. And if they just added a little bit of twist and side stretches and hip openers and back bends, they would all be super flexible as well. So I'm like, they're getting so many things right. So I'm like, that's really my goal is to try to crack the code on how to help people get consistent with the good stuff. And in yoga, let's say there are 2,000 poses in yoga. You can try all of them. 1,000 of them is going to be inaccessible, and then maybe 500 of them are going to feel really bad for you. But then there are a couple of dozens of poses that are going to feel amazing for you. And you should do those every day for the rest of your life, just in the same way that you're brushing your teeth. Like imagine you didn't brush your teeth for 10 years. And then I give you a toothbrush and toothpaste. And I say, try to do this for 2 minutes every day. And then a week later, you're going to come back and say, what? Sebastian, thank you so much for showing me the light. Dental hygiene feels amazing. Like I couldn't believe I felt that bad before, but now when I have the contrast, this is amazing. Or you never had a shower, and then you have a shower with shampoo, and then you feel fresh for the first time. That's how your joints and your fascia and your muscles feel when you consistently do yoga for BJJ. And you can get that same feeling with yoga, but it's going to be a much longer process because there's going to be more distractions and more to choose from, basically.
No, very valid points. I mean, do you think that's why when you were saying about the guys praying sort of 5 times a day, you've talked about the emphasis of consistency over duration? Because you get the people who go to the gym and train for 3 hours, lifting everything, running, swimming, and then they're wondering why they're sore for months after and they never go back. But if you go regular, like short, even if it's short, sharp bursts, the consistent workout will build your muscle, make you healthier, build your tendon, strengthen your tendons, all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's why you created the 10 and 10, 10 minutes a day for 10 days? Is short daily yoga the best way to get started? Even if it's not the full-in experience we get, at least it gets you into the habit. Like, how do we make it a system in a busy life?
That's the key question. If I crack that question and can help 1 million people with that, I'm going to be a multimillionaire. Creating those habits or basically breaking old habits is the real key question. And the real enemy, the real devil today that we're trying to defeat is, of course, screen addiction. Getting people off doom scrolling and getting off, and I'm struggling with this too because the phone is a goddamn amazing tool. God damn it! I'm recording all videos in 4K on my phone, and I have super audio, and the AI on the computer can do all kinds of things by improving the audio. Like the audio that you're listening to now is for sure enhanced with AI, and the phone is an amazing tool, but it's not. It doesn't help my knees at all. So getting people off their phones and I actually started recommending the phone. So if you want to get consistent with something, put a reminder in your calendar, and every time you draw down that notification drawer, you should be reminded every day, drink an extra glass of water, take a deep breath, be nice to your kids, whatever it is, put it there. And if you want to do 15 minutes of mobility, you make sure to have that task there and so that you see it every single day. So that's really. But I think 10 minutes is way too much for many people. Just do a few lessons so that you find a couple of really nice poses. One pose that you can do every morning. If it's a forward fold in your bed, you're sitting up and you do like a 1 minute forward fold. And then before bed, maybe you do legs up the wall. So you're throwing your legs up the wall and you do just like a leg inversion. So you're laying down, but you're at 90 degrees. If you do those 2 poses every day, then you got started and you're doing 2 minutes every day. And if you're adding a squat when you're waiting for the bus, now you're up to 3 poses. That's infinitely more than no poses. And then before jiu-jitsu, if you do a down dog and an up dog, now you're going to get some real benefits. So if you can start with just 1 minute or 1 pose every day and then build yourself up to 5 and eventually 10, then there is nothing that's going to stop you from doing 60 minutes every day 8 years from now. So never be afraid to start too small is my best advice, I think.
That's a good point because I think that's the thing into it is we see all these amazing transitions and flips and all these kinds of some of the greats in jiu-jitsu do. But if we need mobility and flexibility to really execute like high level technique, and so few people then won't do the 2-minute little burst to get into it, then the 5-minute exercise. They won't drink the water and all that. So we see these big goals, but we don't really think we can achieve them. But like you're saying, if building it consistently, you start getting into it and you improve and you start leveling up at the different stages as you go along. But a lot of people struggle with the breath control. A lot of people hold their breath when they're transitioning, and they kind of, I don't know, do they feel like they're passing out sometimes, or they feel like they're a bit panicky? How can we utilize breath control properly when you're moving through the poses? Do you have like a mantra or a metal cue that kind of helps you stay present, connected to the movement, but also to remember to breathe?
No. Breathing in yoga and jiu-jitsu is the same as timing when you're trying to do an attack. If you want to time the ankle pick, the only way to do that is by making it so familiar that it's automated. You want to. This is not just for the breath, but this is for those transition as well that you talked about. It's very hard to do a transition well and smooth and while you're breathing when you haven't done the technique and the movement enough. And I believe that the reason people struggle with let's say a hip bump sweep from closed guard, the struggle that people have isn't necessarily the opponent resisting. If you do it at the wrong timing, and if you do the technique wrong, so you're doing it on your elbow instead of coming up with your hand in the ground, then it's never going to work because of mechanics. And if your opponent is bigger and stronger and he knows you're going to do it, it's never going to work because you don't have a good setup and good timing. That's fair enough. But most of the time, I think the reason why you can't execute the move is because your body hasn't done that pattern enough. So you're trying to do it on a resisting opponent before you even have you haven't even done the technique enough to not make the major mistakes. And then you're judging the technique when you actually put in between 20 and 200 reps when you probably needed 7 or 100 or 1,000. And I think the way to cut down on that time a lot, if you just want to spend 2 weeks getting good at the technique, then you need to master that technique in slow motion without a partner. So you need to be able to do that hip bump sweep effortlessly in a yoga flow. So you're going right side, left side, right side, left side, and then freeze at the top, balance on one hand on one foot, and get used to that position, so much so that you're starting to get fatigued and you're really struggling to hold that position because you're making it really difficult for yourself. And then when you do it with an opponent, like, oh, I didn't need to actually stop there. I could just pass through. Oh, that's nice. Now you created contrast between the really difficult yoga position and the really easy jiu-jitsu position. So I think about yoga not as a separate activity. Think about it like shadow jiu-jitsu. You see Rocky on in the Rocky movies, he's doing shadow boxing. Like everybody started shadow boxing after Rocky did shadow boxing, right?
Yeah.
And shadow boxing is really valuable to be able to go through the patterns because a punch in the air can look completely identical to a punch on a bag or a punch on an opponent. It can be the same punch. It's just that it doesn't land. And I believe that shadow jiu-jitsu we're not doing that enough. And if you're slowing down shadow jiu-jitsu, so it's really, really controlled and really precise, then you have yoga.
I like that. I really like that. And is that the problem with yoga? Is people see what they believe it's complex kind of motions, but and they think they're going to struggle to learn them, or they don't understand it, and they focus too much on it, but should they focus on the repetition of the movement or understanding the underlying movement concepts? Is it a bit of both? And then you, like you're saying, do the shadow movement of it, build it up slowly, and then add repetition. How would we learn some of the more complex motions? Is it just practicing it and letting the body adapt to it? Or do you need to understand, the hip hinge or the alignment, how your spine is structured. How intense do you need to get into it to really learn it?
Well, it depends on one thing basically. What's your time frame? If you want to learn to move well, you can do that on your own, but it's going to take time. It's going to be free, but it's going to take time. If you want the fast track, it's not going to be free, but it's going to be fast. And that's why I create a product. Like I'm selling, I'm preaching a religion, but I'm also a businessman. So I know, I
Aren't they
know
all?
that. Yes, but I know I can cut down a lot of trial and error out of your journey,
Yeah.
and I want to charge money for that because I know that it's gonna bring lots of value. I get people that have been a member on my website for 8 years. They pay thousands of dollars to be a member for all those years, and they say this is the best thing that's ever happened to me because I can still train jiu-jitsu. And I know with my knee injury that I had before I started, I would have quit long ago, and I'm still here and I'm still doing well. So I get confirmation all the time that it really works for people.
So do you think that there's that benefit for that every practitioner should be doing like yoga for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and obviously, making making you a lot of money in it as well. But do you think there's also they should be cross training? Should they be doing judo and like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Should they be incorporating weights and stuff? How would you kind of set them up so that they can be healthy and train, but also prevent injuries? Because it's not just your muscles; it's like your tendons and your joints and things like that. Is yoga enough to do this, or should we be doing additional stuff on top of the yoga?
I think that the downside of yoga and jiu-jitsu is that it's all done inside. You need to get out in nature, and the best excuse to go out in nature is probably go for a run. If you can go for a run in the forest, jiu-jitsu and yoga is never going to be able to replace that. So to go on a bike or a run in the forest in nature and not have any screens and just to drink in some nature, that's great. And if you can get 2 hours of cardio in every week over 4 sessions or 2 sessions, if you run basically 20 kilometers per week, I think that's where science agrees that that's probably the most healthy amount of cardio, 2 hours a week to 20 kilometers per week. And then if you can do at least two strength sessions where you're lifting heavy weights, because that's good for your bone density and it's good for your ligaments. And if you're doing it with good technique, then you're not going to get injured from lifting heavy weights. I think nothing can replace heavy weights. Like no calisthenics or anything is gonna be the same as lifting a heavy deadlift because it's so good for your tendons and your bones. And yoga can never replace that either. And I think nothing can replace jiu-jitsu either. Jiu-jitsu is amazing. But you don't get mobile from doing jiu-jitsu. You get really damn stiff from doing jiu-jitsu, and you get really damn stiff from running, and you get really damn stiff from lifting weights as well. So when you're doing all the things that are good, strength, running, jiu-jitsu, that's at the cost of your mobility. So you're decreasing your mobility from doing all those healthy stuff. So I see mobility and yoga for BJJ, the product that I'm selling. The reason I chose that product is because the one I believe the most in, because it's the catalyst, the enabler, the foundation of everything else. Like you take being able to sit down on the floor for granted. Look at your grandma. She is not comfortable sitting down on the floor because she doesn't know if she can get up for herself again, and it's too embarrassing. So she's going to avoid even trying to squat, and that's why her knees are giving in. And that's why she doesn't go for walks. And that's why she starts getting sick. So it's goddamn dangerous to lose your mobility. And if you're 95 years old and you can't wipe yourself in the butt as well, that's not a life worth living. I have a friend, my neighbor's, his mom is 100 years old. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. He's like, no, it's not amazing. She doesn't want to live anymore. I'm like, why? Because she can't go for walks anymore. She lives outside London. She used to go for walks hours every day. Now she lost that mobility and she can't move anymore. so she doesn't want to go on. I'm like, yeah, let's never end up there.
No.
Even one day, jiu-jitsu definitely has an expiry date. We are not going to be able to spar forever. But we will be able to sit down on the floor forever. Mobility is not something that should necessarily disappear just because you get older. Strength, yes. Muscle mass, yes. Cardio, yes. It will slowly decrease after age 70, according to science. But mobility should be able to be there until the day we die.
It's very true. I mean, I like going out on my bike into nature, and obviously, like for my cardio, and I find it's kind of it's just matched the therapeuticness of going out into nature and seeing wildlife and getting out, into the green areas away from the traffic and the noise, as much as the running. But it's just the general health, and how many people stop like doing anything. They don't use their muscles once they retire, so they just kind of turn into a blob almost. Like my dad's a great example of that. He used to be physically strong, and he could. I remember him using his hands to take it out to tighten wheel nuts, and the AA guy came to help my mum, like the breakdown service, and he was jumping on it with 2 feet because the dad had put it on so like hand tight, so strong that he couldn't get it off, and the guy was having to literally use his whole weight to jump on it. And now he sleeps all day and he can barely do anything. He's out of breath going upstairs at times, and I really feel for it because he stopped using his body the way he was.
Yes.
He was
Yes.
old farmer strength, and it's really sad that we do that as we get older.
Shame on us and shame on society for accepting that, because your dad is his high risk behavior. I heard a doctor say that if you don't do an hour of intense exercise every day, that should be considered high risk behavior, just like you're cutting your forearms with a razor blade. It should not be socially acceptable to be sedentary. So that's something that you and me and the rest of the jiu-jitsu community have to adapt and promote and change. It's really up to us athletes, because I think, like, when it really comes down to it, athleticism is the greatest expression of human health. Do you agree?
Definitely.
The one that wins the Olympic championships is the ideal for what we all strive for, to be perfectly capable and healthy. And if you can also be a good person while you're doing that, so that your successes benefit others and not just yourself, that's also like that's an idol. Someone that has reached peak physical performance and also is also a good person. I think that's a martial artist. And we shouldn't accept anything else. We should all strive for doing better choices, becoming more athletic, and also make sure that our strength is there to help and protect others that need it. And that's the message of martial arts, and that's why I think it's so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing with Dad, is we're making them go out for walks. We're, better diet, better this, better that. But I always say that to people is, don't get to a point where you need to try win it back, because that is a nightmare journey compared to the small bit of maintenance in comparison that you need to keep it going, to maintain it to that point. And I think that's what we forget, is we always think we can get back to our heydays. But realistically, once you stop doing it, you're on a slippery slope to real, shit town, basically. How would you incorporate yoga for BJJ? Because say you had like a 7-day week person just now who was working 5 days a week. They had their weekends off. They were training Tuesday and a Thursday, for example. How would you incorporate jiu-jitsu, but also your yoga? Would you do yoga each of those 5 days, or not the days you were training, or would you use it as part of your warm-up in that sense? How would you plan that structure and rest days and things like that?
I think there are two tried and tested ways. There are 4 windows in the day where doing these mobility drills comes naturally. One is first thing in the morning. most people do some kind of stretch when they wake up, just like a cat that has been sleeping. They do some stretches. Yeah. So just extend that to 5 or 10 minutes. So when you get out of bed, or even in bed, when you're actually in bed, start your day by doing some circles with your wrists. Like even if you wake up and you're really fatigued, just move one finger and then start moving one wrist and then start moving the ankles. And then do a twist each side and then a hip stretch and then a forward fold. And then you did 5 minutes. Good. That's a good start of the day. It set the tone for the rest of the day. So early morning, 5 to 10 minutes. That's one window. Window number 2, before jiu-jitsu, the warm-ups, we can stop running in circles. Can we agree on that? We should not be running in circles when we're doing jiu-jitsu.
I hate that running in circles.
And so does everybody else. Nobody does it because they love it. They just do it because of habit. So replace the jiu-jitsu warm-ups with a mobility warm-up and you're going to be much better. We agree on that?
Yep.
Nice. After jiu-jitsu, you're really warm, sweaty, which means that when you stretch, it's going to feel really good because you can be much more flexible than normally. So if you just do 3 different stretches after training, one for the back, one for the hips, and one for the shoulder, you're going to feel much better the hours after training. So that's the third window. And then the fourth window is right before you fall asleep. Those 10 minutes when you're laying down in bed, you put away your phone. Your phone should, by the way, never be in your bedroom ever. But when instead of just putting your head on the pillow and trying to sleep immediately, do 1 or 2 or 3 stretches, maybe the same ones as in the morning, or, just a couple of poses, because those stretches is going to throw some hormones into your system that wouldn't be there otherwise. And those hormones are going to help you both sleep better and fall asleep faster. So that's your fourth window. So these 4 windows is one method. Just using those where it's natural. Morning, evening, before and after jiu-jitsu, right? And the other method is to connect. Let's say you're doing a 15-minute session. And you want to do 15 minutes every day. You're like, I'm going to commit to do 15 minutes. Connect it to something else that's permanent, that never changes. Like before the morning coffee, or after I have walked the dog, or as soon as I come home from work, or during lunch break, something that's not changing. Every day, you can carve out 15 minutes, connect it to something else that's always going to be there. You always have to walk the damn dog, otherwise the dog poops on the floor. So it has to be done. And as soon as I come home, I'm going to do my 15 minutes. And then it becomes a sacred routine and you don't need discipline. If you have to rely on motivation or discipline, you didn't do a good enough job. You have to be a systems designer. You have to design a system that is fail-safe. So I think these two attitudes are the most likely to succeed.
That is an awesome answer. It's that that natural little points in your day. We all have them. Like maybe you're waiting for the kettle to boil. You rock out a couple of minutes doing it there.
Yes.
I love that. I love that idea of taking the natural kind of where you would stop and stare into space or play on your phone or something. You could just incorporate it, and then as part of jiu-jitsu and after jiu-jitsu, where you're needing a warm up and a cool down anyway, and that's fantastic. I love that. How would you?
If you're a phone addict, only allow yourself to do the really degenerate stuff like watching YouTube or whatever. Only allow yourself to do it if you're standing on one foot and balancing. Because if you're phone addicted and you can only use let's say you're watching an hour of YouTube every day, or you're doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. If you do that while you're balancing on one leg on a balance board, you're going to have the best ankles and knees and hips in the world, because you're creating a system where the more you're on your phone, the better your mobility is going to be. And if you're sitting in a squat on your phone and you're there for 30 minutes, you're going to have spent 30 minutes in a squat. So like connecting the good stuff with something that you either need to do or something you shouldn't be doing but you do anyways, can also be actually a legit way of changing your perception.
So what would you do if somebody was injured, for example, or they were coming up to a competition? how would they utilize the yoga for BJJ then? Is it just to keep themselves moving, giving them a bit of momentum, a bit of just keeping their body loose? Or is it the case of strengthening the parts of you that you can work while recovering from the injury? How would you use yoga for BJJ at that point?
The problem with BJJ injuries is that people think it's bad luck. It's not bad luck. It's bad preparation, and like when you blow out your knee, it wasn't because you didn't tap in time. It wasn't because it was a scramble and this happened. Every time I hear someone explain injury, the only thing I hear is an excuse. Nobody's taking full responsibility of them getting injured. So like the problem with injuries is that people aren't honest. They're dishonest about their injury. They need to say this injury could 100% have been prevented, and I should be ashamed for being injured because it's completely my fault. Nobody says that, but everybody should say it.
Yeah.
Nobody's injured because they got a piano on the head. They're injured because something happened that shouldn't have happened and they should have prevented it. Almost every time that's true. So if someone is injured, the first thing that they have to do is realize, I am not going to let this happen again. This hurts, and I can't train, and I can't play with my kids. I can't go for a run. This sucks. I'm not going to let this happen again. This is a warning, because just because it wasn't bad luck. Because if you think it's bad luck, then maybe I'm lucky for the rest of my life and it's never going to happen again. And that's wishful thinking. You want to use that time of being injured to self-reflect. And the rehab that you're doing now is the ton of cure that should have been an ounce of prevention. You should have done the ounce of prevention before and do prehab so that you don't have to do rehab. If you're going to do the rehab, have a good time with it and make sure that when you're not injured anymore, you don't stop. But the rehab was actually so enjoyable and so much fun that this is now part of your new routine. Because yoga for BJJ is not like brushing your teeth, because brushing your teeth doesn't feel amazing. It's just the same monotonous thing, and then you feel pretty much a little bit cleaner. But yoga for BJJ, when you do a nice 15-minute or 30-minute mobility routine, you feel like $1 million afterwards. Felt like you had a massage and went for a run and trained jiu-jitsu without being broken and had a sauna and a smoothie. That's how good it feels to have done a proper mobility session. So the payoff isn't that you are just able to do jiu-jitsu for life. It also feels really goddamn amazing when you have learned your body and gotten to know your body well enough to be able to do what your body is craving. Your body is craving some movements, but you don't know what they are because you don't have enough experience. When I do my sessions, I just feel so good afterwards. And that's that immediate payoff. You don't have to do yoga because you want to live longer or because you want to train. You do 30 minutes or 45 minutes of yoga because you want to do it, because it feels so good. That's the end goal.
It's like, I love that point. I love your mindset on it, because it's true what you say, that if you do get injured, a lot of times it's because you've been neglecting yourself, it's neglecting your health, and it's not that you were just unlucky. A lot of times it's because that you've been an idiot. It's you've not
Yes.
built your strength of your body or kept it in a good enough condition, and it's
Yes.
like the brittle plants. If you accidentally bend them, they snap. And I think that's the problem, is we assume that we're invincible, and a lot of times it's our ego quickly says, actually, you're about to get very, very sore and find out you're not. How do you find the flexibility, the control from yoga and apply it to the rolling? What changes do you see in people's jiu-jitsu games after they start incorporating yoga?
I went to a gym here in Dubai called Entropy, and I was really received like a brother there. It was a great experience. And I asked the head coach today or yesterday when I did a couple of days of rolling in back to back. And I asked him, because he really enjoyed the mobility. He was like, I'm a believer. I'm convinced. I'm converting to your religion, and he said that he could really tell that my whole jiu-jitsu style was influenced or even based on the yoga that I was doing, because we did a jiu-jitsu warm-up and he just saw me do the yoga moves over and over. And everybody that I sparred with, they had a really tough time dealing with me, because nothing of the stuff that I was doing was what they were used to. They were used to people doing a typical Toriando or knee slide, using movement patterns that they see other people do. And those movement patterns aren't based on yoga. They are based on a different range of motion and a different structural integrity. When I do a back step and a knee slide, it's a yoga back step and a yoga knee slide, because I have trained those movements to become my default go-tos. So I basically have maybe 10 times, 1,000% more options when it comes to available positions when I'm sparring. So I can just drop into the weirdest, funky positions that I've been in 100 times and they have never seen before. So those defaults, they like, I have something I call split mount. It's like side control, but my leg is on top of you. So I'm basically in a reverse mount, sideways, in a side control mount with a leg over you, and you have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, oh, I love this position. This is not something that you would ever feel comfortable in, because your splits aren't deep enough, and you don't really feel comfortable having both underhook and like a body lock with one arm and a crossface with the other, and then having your leg on top of the guy. But I know it's going to be a perfect setup for something here and something there. So like it's basically, if you think about it like a computer game, it's just like secret levels unlocked. It's an add-on pack, and then it's just a bunch of secret levels and secret skills and secret weapons. It's just like, I can't believe I played this game for years and I didn't know about these secret levels. That's how it feels.
That's one that I've used myself. It's like some of these tips I learned, it's like a video game map, and it opens up, like when you see them, they were dark and suddenly it opens up the light as the character moves into that area. And I find sometimes, like, when I listen to some of the stuff you've said or other people have said, and it's like, God, that's like a secret. It's like getting a star in Super Mario. You get this cheat code that you can go and do stuff, and you think, why are people not doing this? And you realize it's a lot of them. They're far too impatient. They expect immediate change. But like you said earlier about how you just need to spend the same amount of time roughly to get out the bad stuff you put onto your body. That you can't just fix it straight away, but with a bit of consistency, you can integrate amazing changes into it. Yes. How would you work with somebody in terms of diet, supplements, hydration? What are you measuring in addition to this, just to make sure? Are you saying to them, eat a salad and drink some water a day? Are you saying to them, take, I don't know, creatine or just a good protein supplement? Or, is there things that you're monitoring, and how do you manage that to make sure they're taking that? Do you have like something on the app that they can record what they're eating and drinking, etc.?
I'm gonna answer this from a 30 or 60,000 feet perspective. Discipline is, stop thinking about discipline, because let's say take your ex-girlfriend. Do you need discipline in order to not call her again?
When you first break up, maybe, but you shouldn't after a while.
Why?
Because it's the start is hard, and then you just get into it. You see the benefits as you mature into it.
Yeah, but you have complete resolve. You have complete conviction that this is. I have absolutely no reason to call this person again. I'm done forever. And when a smoker stops smoking and they have complete resolve, I am not going to light a cigarette ever again. They don't need discipline. So resolve is stronger than discipline, and resolve means complete conviction. When you're completely convicted and you know that this is true, then you don't need discipline. So you need to develop resolve in hydration, for example. You need to understand, really understand, that not drinking enough water will slowly kill you. And if you really go even deeper and you realize that hunger and many other things can be masking dehydration, and you really respect hydration and you realize that it's not just water, it's also the magnesium and the sodium and the, what do you call it, electrolytes. The electrolytes actually matter. Okay, it's not just something that runners take because it's trendy. Electrolytes is salts that makes whatever. I don't know all the details, but when you have resolve that you know that this is true, you don't need discipline to drink water. This is going to be your foundation. So your belief is your foundation. Your conviction is your foundation. So you need to be convinced that McDonald's is the devil and a quinoa salad with tempeh is a better option. And it's not just a better option because it says so in the newspaper. You need to know for yourself that you should never put a McDonald's hamburger down in your belly. You need to develop this conviction yourself. And if you choose to believe some random reel from some influencer, shame on you. It's your job. We live in the age of information, but also information overload. So you need to take the time to study and figure out what is the true foundation of a healthy life. Hydration, sleep, nutrition, time in nature, good social connections, not smoking and drinking and doing drugs. You have a list of things that needs to be in place before you can start lifting weights and running and doing yoga. So yoga for BJJ is not the foundation of your life. Sleep is, and having a sense of purpose is more important than running and lifting weights and doing jiu-jitsu. You need to have all the basics in place. And only you are responsible. You cannot wait for the government to issue a everything in place program. You have to take charge of that yourself. And if you're a smoker, you have to stop smoking. Nobody can stop smoking or drinking for you. You have to take that decision yourself. And if you want instant results, you're asking for something that you don't really want. Nobody wants instant results. If you're playing Super Mario, and nobody plays Super Mario and says, I just want to get to the last level and get this over with. I just want to win immediately. That's not the point. And about that, I saw a community with Super Mario hacks. Like 15 years ago, there was someone that made a super, super, super difficult hack called Kaiser Mario World. And he made basically the levels almost impossible to beat. And that has now sprouted into a huge community of gamers where everybody makes even harder levels for each other. That's insanely difficult. And these guys are just enjoying it so much. It's just like jiu-jitsu. It's so hard. And they love sparring against each other and playing each other's levels because they don't get instant results. I see some of these guys, they spend 30, 40, 50 hours on these levels and these games. And they just hate each other so much, but they're enjoying it so much because it's a challenge. So you need the foundations in place first, and then you need to enjoy the challenge of getting those foundations in place. It's not supposed to be easy. Nobody said it was easy, as the song says. And challenging yourself to figure out, everybody thinks they're eating more or less healthy. But maybe you don't know what healthy is. Maybe you're wrong. What if you're wrong? What if you eat salmon and cottage cheese? And then I tell you that that salmon, the Norwegian salmon that you think is so healthy, is being rated the most toxic food in the world. What? I didn't know that. No, because you're an ignorant idiot. You have to educate yourself and actually double check. Is salmon really healthy? Just ask ChatGPT. And then if ChatGPT says, it's more or less healthy, maybe I shouldn't just ask ChatGPT. Maybe I should ask someone and then ask someone else and then dig deeper and read some research papers. You actually have to go through some pain to learn something. If you're happy with just reading some article, then you're not going to have a good foundation for the rest of your life. And then when you have the foundation, when you enjoy the challenge of getting those foundations in place, then you're going to really enjoy the yoga for BJJ and the jiu-jitsu, because then you're not going to be inflamed, you're not going to be dehydrated, you're not going to be underslept. Then you're really going to start to experience how good your body is supposed to feel. People don't know how good their bodies are supposed to feel. When you're hydrated, well slept, when you have purpose, when you have good nutrition, when you're lifting weights, running, doing yoga and jiu-jitsu, very few people know how good that feels.
I love that. I couldn't agree more with that, because it's how often do you get people who want the instant gratification? And it's like Aerosmith beautifully said, it's about the journey, not the destination. And we all want it now. But when you get it, you then want the next thing, because you realize you enjoy the evolution, the change that comes in you as you're progressing, as you're working. And I think that's the thing.
I think people aren't aware that they want instant gratification. Do you really want to tell your grandchildren the story when you had instant gratification and you didn't have to work for your results?
No? And it'd be a terrible film as well. And I think that's the thing. Like you're saying, it's how often do you get people who sit there, and because of modern technology and the crap and all that we eat and the crap in the environments and stuff, we don't know what it's like anymore to be healthy, well rested, well hydrated. And I think that's the beauty of programs like yours. You're teaching people you can actually be great. You can be back to how you felt as a kid and train that way and enjoy life and be able to deal and fit for life. I mean, I remember reading a review where Fionn Davis, like one of the legends of the sport, said she loved the yoga for BJJ because of the creative freedom it gave her. How do you find that mindset between doing it, being a competitor, teaching yoga, and then being the businessman side of things? How do you find that transition between the different hats? Because you do this with your partner. How on earth do you juggle that sort of personal and professional side of life, plus being the coach, competitor, Seb the man, Seb the businessman, Seb the trainer, etc.? How do you juggle all of these kind of conflicting personas?
I don't think I do a very good job of it, but I don't see myself as a teacher, because I think it's dangerous to see yourself as a teacher, because it quickly turns into a power position where you kind of rot. So I try to see myself as a reminder. I'm trying to remind people of how good they're supposed to feel, or remind people what's important. It's not that I'm not actually. I don't see this when I say I'm the mobility messiah. I don't mean that God shows me. I'm not the chosen one. I'm just someone. I'm just a dude that reminds you what's important. It's important to drink water, and it's important to do some mobility every day. It doesn't go further than that. And business wise, basically trying to get people to do one class is my biggest challenge. If I could get 1 million people to try a 5-minute class, I would have enough money to for the rest of my life, and I wouldn't have to work another day. But I don't really have a work. I have a vocation. A vocation is something that you can't stop doing, even if the money stops coming in. I'm going to continue to do the same thing because I really enjoy it, because I see how much people are enjoying the fruits of my labor. And I have the easiest job in the world in one way, because the people that actually start doing my yoga for BJJ stuff, they have a functioning, capable body. And the human body is the most adaptable thing in the universe that we know of. And when I get to bypass your brain and just go straight to your body and say, hey, body, try this hip stretch, and try this hamstring stretch, and try this handstand. Your body's going to say, hey, Sebastian, that was amazing. Thank you very much. And your brain doesn't have to be involved in it at all. It's very easy for me to do, because your body is going to be addicted to these movement patterns. So if I can just get your body to start moving, your mind is not going to have trouble paying me any amount of money, basically.
I love that. I love how you're not trying to sell it. You're just immediately saying it's fantastic. Look at everything it's doing, and just try it, and you'll be amazed at the life changing effect it has on that it does for everybody. How do you think you've changed as a man by doing jiu-jitsu for such a long time? Since you become a father, or you've been married, as you've become become more of a figurehead in the jiu-jitsu industry, for people who admire you for your competition, for your products, etc. How have you learned, or what have you learned about life as you've gone through these different stages and different roles?
I'm going to connect that question back to what you said. You said a lot of people say that they used to. I don't want to be a used to guy. I don't want to be a washed up has been. And since I haven't competed much in 6 years, that's my perception of how many people see me, is that I'm a guy that won some competitions 100 years ago, but I'm not relevant anymore. And I really want to be able to compete in jiu-jitsu for indefinite amount of time. I love competing. I love testing myself against the best guys in the world. So I definitely want to stay relevant, and I feel like TRT and steroids is a short-term solution for some people, but I think that doing mobility and learning to train jiu-jitsu in a smart, responsible way is a long-term solution where you don't need any supplements and you don't need to prescribe to any kind of belief system, other than that jiu-jitsu is done with the body, and all jiu-jitsu techniques are based on movement and precision and control, and you can learn that without a partner. So if you're doing mobility and yoga for your warm-ups 20-30 minutes before class, then your jiu-jitsu is going to be 10 times easier to learn. That's my message, and that's what I'm gonna keep hammering in. But for myself personally, I see myself as I don't see myself as a very good competitor, because I'm comparing myself to Joseph Chen and Tommy and Tarek and Mateusz Szczeciński and these guys. And I definitely want to be able to kick their asses, because they deserve it. They deserve to have their asses kicked. And it's very difficult to kick these guys' asses, and it's a challenge that I enjoy, because it is basically impossible. But damn me if I'm not going to try the impossible. I really want to test myself against the best guys for as long as I live.
That probably says more about you than a lot of people, because you're always wanting to test yourself. You're always wanting to push yourself. You're always wanting to evolve, and you adapt as you go. And I think, the fact that you've created a product here that changes the life, and it helps so many people become fit and be able to train jiu-jitsu for a long time, to overcome injuries, to become healthier again, to kind of rekindle their fitness. You've probably made a massive impact to a lot of people, far more than, the competing and inspiring them to do that sort of thing. You've changed people's lives by this product you've created. So you should be amazingly proud of the impact you're having. There's a lot of love out there in the community, and everybody's motivated. And like you're saying, coming to you and staying for year after year because of the great product that you've put out there. For those listening, how would you sell it to them? How would you, like, if I was to come in just now and I said, "Oh, I like this podcast. What will I get from it?" What's the purpose of it? What's included in my membership? How would you say to a complete newbie who said, "I'm interested, tell me a bit more about it"? What would you say?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the praise, and I think that when the day they put me under 3 feet of dirt, the only thing that's really going to matter is how I treated the people and what I did for others. And if I could help 10,000 people to extend their jiu-jitsu career by half a year or a decade, that's gonna count for millions of hours of increased general happiness in humanity. So if I can do that, then my life will not have been in vain. But for people that are like, okay, just seeing this from an investment perspective, how much value for money am I gonna get? It depends on how much right now you value a functioning body, because I can make your body 50% better in 2 months. That's a guarantee. And I have both a free trial and a full refund guarantee. So, so if you're worried about paying $1 a day and you think that's expensive, that's a high risk. There's a free trial and there's 100% money back guarantee. So you should have absolutely no excuse not to try. And if you are lazy, it means that you aren't afraid enough. Fear should be your motivating factor. Fear of not being able to wipe yourself in the butt when you're 80, or shorter term, not having to stop jiu-jitsu because you break a knee. A lot of people are afraid of that. So let if nothing else, then let fear be the driver for you to try. And then to convince you that it works, I just have to convince you to do one class. And if you really need proof, I created something called the mobility challenge. So you do 12 different tests. It takes about 10 minutes, and each test gives you a 0 or a 1. And if you end up with 12 points, it means your mobility is pretty good. And if you end up with 0 points, that should be a red flag. Oh, damn, I'm like an old person. I can't do any of these. And then I have, based on those 12 tests, I created both a habit tracker that you can print out on your fridge and a 12-week program with 15 minutes every day that you can do consistently. And then when you're done with the program, you take the test again and you see how many percentage increase did I get? Did I go from 6? If you went from 6 points to 12 points, then you had 100% increase in your mobility. So I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. Just start with something as simple as that. Just a free trial, take a class, take the test and take a couple of classes. If it feels good, just continue and then don't stop. And then 8 years later, you're going to be one of these convicts that just are praising the Holy Scripture around the world.
I love it. I mean, I'll put everything into the show notes because there's so many amazing things you do. And I think just listening to some of the jiu-jitsu greats who do your program, all these people, the testimonials alone should sell it. But the fact that you have all these amazing tests and sort of alternative options to go in there just to trial it because it's that good. You don't need to sell it. You just need to offer it at different variations to get past people's initial fear, because everybody thinks, I don't want to pay for something. But when it's something that will save your life, that could prolong your ability just to pick up your kids, to get up and down off the floor, to be able to be better, healthier on the mat as well. £1 a day is nothing, especially when you think how much you're paying for a coffee.
But on the other hand, like people pay a disproportionate amount of money for a car, or a coffee or a cigarette, or like money isn't money. Like $1 is not $1. So what I decided to do was I lowered my prices by an insane amount. So now lifetime access to my platform, meaning you have full access to everything I put out and everything that I'm going to put out for the rest of life, for $297. That's £230 for lifetime. So if you can't afford that, you can do the free trial, and then you can do the casual membership for like $10 a month. But most people by the end of the month that have a normal job in Western society, they can afford an unexpected expense of $300. And you only have to do this once. It's not once a year, it's once in a lifetime. So you do that once. Mm-hmm. And if you use Yoga for BJJ for 30 years, that's going to be about 20 cents per week. So it's a pretty cheap investment for the long term.
And it's an amazing investment. I would highly recommend everybody listening that gets it. I mean, I know I've used up so much of your time, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on, because it's been a pleasure. I knew your answers were going to be good, and I knew the product was fantastic, and it's something that's highly recommended. But what would you want people listening to take from this? I would love to do a round 2, and we can go into different areas and competition stuff and just all sorts of here and there. But until we can do that, what would you want people to take as a summary of this podcast?
Be very afraid, because you only have one life. be very afraid that you're going to waste your life making excuses and procrastinate and letting your laziness or ego drive. Take life by the horns and look yourself in the mirror and really take it seriously. And if you love jiu-jitsu, you're not going to be able to do it for the rest of your life unless you're doing something actively every day to make that happen. Stop smoking, start drinking more water, eat healthier, go to sleep earlier, less screens, do mobility, get those things in place for a good life and prioritize it every day and create a system where it's going to happen no matter how motivated or disciplined you are. Make that your top priority, and your wife, your kids, your family they're gonna be affected by you in so many ways by the decisions that you're making, that you are gonna be a real influencer. You're gonna influence and create ripple effects that are gonna spread out in the whole society around you. And if you keep being consistent with that, people are gonna start inviting you for podcasts. Like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And you're like, it wasn't difficult. I just started and I kept going. That's really the most beautiful thing you can do for the world, is just taking better care of yourself.
Very true. And you can't help others unless you're taking care of yourself. I love that. It's a great message. And how can we follow along the journey? How can we buy the product? How can we find you on social media, your websites? How do we follow along this journey? To this jiu-jitsu and yoga legend you're becoming, and how can we take part and join Yoga for BJJ?
Two obvious ways. One is Yoga for BJJ on Instagram if you're on social media. The website is obviously yogaforbjj.net. Actually, I tried to buy the .com domain, but I couldn't. And then I have a free community called hub.yogaforbjj.net. It's a free community where I post some content. So if you want to do the really cheap version, which is free, you can just sign up there and join the community. And then I'm probably gonna sell you something later when you can't resist. But if you're like, okay, God damn it, I'm just gonna commit to this, then I recommend the lifetime one, because that's gonna be the most bang for your buck. $297 up front, and then you have it for the rest of life. And for those people that are really like, okay, I not only want to do this for myself, I want my kids or my teammates to be able to do this, then I recommend to look into the instructor's course for mobility, like Yoga for BJJ instructor's course, where you become a certified yoga instructor, and you practice it for about a year. And then you can actually learn how I teach this to others and how you can teach it to others and make it into a career. And then it doesn't really matter what the cost is. The cost for the course is the same as the lifetime, $297. But then it's an investment because you're going to make that money back. Either join the community on hub.yogaforbjj.net or send me a message on Instagram or just go to the website and buy the lifetime membership there. And if you're disappointed for whatever reason, I don't need the money so bad that I can't give you a full refund. So I'm happy to give a refund for whatever reason.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.